Going live. 3, 2. Alrighty, we are back. We are back in business, everybody. It has been a long time. Been a couple weeks here. I enjoyed a lovely vacation and a great relaxing time in South Carolina. Beautiful time. Shout out to the people of Hilton Head. An amazing place to go. And while I was away, so many things happened. Where to even begin? I think we should begin. Huge shout out to Bob from Chicago. Pope Leo XIV. Unbelievable. An American Pope. They said we'd never see it. And the reason they said we would never see it is because obviously America is an economic superpower, a military superpower, a social superpower in the sense of our social media, of Hollywood, cultural superpower, if you will. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Cultural superpower. And for a country that has a resource superpower too, I guess. And for a country that has all of those things, the last thing the Vatican wants to do is give them biblical superpower and biblical superiority, religious superiority. But Bob from Chicago was appointed. And while he is from Chicago, I believe he's from like Naperville or somewhere like southwest side of Chicago. While he is from there, most of his missionary work has been done in Peru. And by all accounts, people talking to him that he's not a very like traditional, like he's American. He's very clearly a Midwest. You see him give that high five to that kid. Like he just slapped that stuff. That wasn't a Midwest slap. You see him stressing at the World Series. That man, that's a Midwest man who loves Chicago, but doesn't like identify as like a blue blood. He's not Cardinal Dolan. Cardinal Dolan is very much a American clergyman, whereas this guy was formed mostly in Peru, and most of his work seems to have been done in Peru. And I think that's what gave a lot of people comfort in potentially electing him. And Paroline was just not going to get the votes, it seems. Neither was Tagle, neither was Burke, or neither was Sarah. These people were just not going to get the votes. Unbelievable scenes every time. Like, it's a tradition that I don't know how long they've been doing the white smoke, black smoke. But this year was so interesting because I remember the last few conclaves. I went to Catholic school growing up, and when the conclaves happened, especially for Benedict, I remember it being a very big thing, and we were very tuned in, but nobody else really seemed to be tuned in, not at the time at least. And this time around, and like with Francis, people were kind of tuned in. It was Catholics cared. Other Christian denominations obviously cared. Some, like Jewish people cared a little bit. Other religions kind of cared, but not really. But this time around, it feels like, and just, maybe it's just because I'm on, different social media and my feed is catered to me and I was interested in the whole thing. But it really seemed like a lot of people who, like, I saw a lot of people in the comment section saying, like, I'm not Catholic or I don't really care, but this has been super interesting. And I think that's fascinating. And I think I talked about this before, but I really think that speaks to what Pope Francis was able to do. He was very non-traditional in many ways and is open to a lot of very valid criticisms about maybe being a little ambiguous on scripture and other things. But he did, I think, do a lot to ease the image of the church in a lot of people's eyes. And I understand the criticisms of that, and I understand the clap on the back, the people that were happy with that. Regardless, it's been super, super, I don't even know what a good word would be. Just to see so many people invested in something. And when he walked out, I think everybody who saw him, he just has this air, man, of like, he just looks like a good guy. He just looks like a sweet old dude who he's so happy, and the energy and the vibes you get from him are so good. I thought it was so funny when the news was interviewing different cardinals and priests and bishops about him, like, did you know him, that sort of thing. What is he like? That so many of them were like, yeah, he's a good guy. Like, that's, yeah, I would hope so. He's the Pope. He has like, that's the only thing he needs to be, is a good guy. That's his only thing he really needs to do, is be a good person. Like, yeah, I would hope he's a good. Yeah, he's a good guy. Okay, very cool. And it was so nice to see St. Peter. What a beautiful, beautiful place St. Peter's Basilica is. Oh my gosh! Shout out to Michelangelo. Unbelievable. I know what killed him. I don't know if anyone's ever read this. Oh, and by the way, before I get too deep into this, I think I will be getting my first guest on very soon. I haven't scheduled it yet, but I got them all lined up. They said they will do it. So look forward to not having to listen to just me yap about nonsense. And apparently I talk about pooping a lot. That's what I've been told. I deeply apologize to my majority female audience. I deeply apologize. It's not a conscious thing. So you will look forward to that in the future. But the Sistine Chapel. So Michelangelo, when he was making this, he made the Sistine. He was commissioned to paint the Sistine Chapel, as very famously the picture of Adam and God with the two fingers touching is maybe like the most famous of all of that art. But I read a book by Simon Sebag Montefiore, who wrote this book called Written in History, Letters That Changed the World. He also did a really good, not poetry book. He didn't do the Poetry Remedy. He did another one that was speeches that changed the world. And that's also a great book. I highly recommend it. But in Letters That Changed the World, he has this letter that's from around 1509. So I believe Michelangelo was commissioned in like 1504, 05-ish to do the Sistine Chapel, and finished it around 1511, 1512, somewhere in there. So he's pretty far along in doing this. And he writes this letter to his friend Giovanni da Pistoia, or Pistoia. So it does. He writes to his friend Gio. That's what he does, who's a poet, and he writes this thing that's like, it's half a letter and it's half a poem, and he writes basically about how much it sucks to be doing this. He's like wenched up all day trying to paint this thing, and he is over it. He's like, I'm not a painter. I'm a sculptor. This sucks. Like, I'm upside down for hours every single day. And mind you, a lot of people don't know this. Michelangelo was 5'2". He was smaller than probably 20% of collegiate female gymnasts. He's roughly that build. So next time you see a gymnast, like, I know on TV it's hard to tell because it's like the NBA when they're all next to each other, so they all look the normal size, but really they're huge. Or like in the gymnast, they're very tiny. Like, he was a tiny, even back then, he was a tiny dude. Very tiny skull. And it kind of makes it fun. I believe he did David as well. Did he do David? I believe he did David. Let me double check that before yeah, he did David. 1501 to 1504. So David is huge. How tall is it? It's really big from my understanding. 17 feet tall. 17 feet tall. So you imagine you're Michelangelo's friend, and he has you over to show you a little bit of what he's working on. And this 5'2" munchkin of the Lollipop Guild shows you a 17-foot tall statue of a naked guy who it legitimate 3 times his size. 17 feet is almost 2 stories. It's almost 2 stories tall. That's how big this statue is. And you got to imagine, like, you imagine you're the friend that he like based this statue off, and you come over with all the boys, and he shows it to you, and you're like, what? What is this, dude? This is an enormous naked statue of me. And he goes, like, but don't you like it? I think it really captures your essence. He goes, why is it so big? Why am I naked? What is this? And then all the boys are like, oh, Mike, this is crazy, dude. This was not it. And Mike's like, guys, come on. Like, I'm a sculptor. I'm not a painter. I'm a sculptor. This is what I do. You don't like it? Like, no, but like, it's fire. Like, it's unbelievable. The sculpting is crazy. It's just, why is it so big? Why am I naked? So many questions, Mike. Like, this is nuts. But anyway, he, tiny little man, wenched up to the ceiling. They wench him up, and he's upside down. He's got blood moving to his head. He's trying to paint. He's not a painter, as he would say. And he writes this. Let me see if I can find it. It's very funny when you think about how much we revere, and we look at him and go, oh my gosh, like, what divine inspiration. Like, divine inspiration maybe, but also like 90% of the blood was in his head. So the rest of his body he's not in control. So maybe it was divine inspiration. Okay, here it is. This is a direct quote of Michelangelo to his friend Gio. This is an excerpt translated obviously from Italian. I've already grown a goiter from this torture, hunched up here like a cat in Lombardy or anywhere else where the stagnant water's poison. My stomach squashed under my chin, my beard pointing at heaven. My brain's crushed in a casket. My breast twists like a harpy's. My brush above me all the time dribbles paint so my face makes a fine floor for droppings. My haunches are grinding into my guts. My haunches are grinding into my guts. My poor ass strains, this the direct quote, my poor ass strains to work as a counterweight. So my haunches are grinding into his guts. His caboose is doing everything to counter his head. Every gesture I make is blind and aimless. My skin hangs loose below me. My spine's all knotted from folding over itself. I'm bent taut like a Syrian bow. This man was a poet. I'm bent taut like a Syrian bow is not a description you hear so often. Bent taut. I might start saying that. I'm bent taut like a Syrian bow. Because I'm stuck like this, my thoughts are crazy, perfidious tripe. Anyone who shoots badly through a crooked blowpipe. My painting is dead. Defend it for me, Giovanni. Protect my honor. I am not in a good place, and I am no painter. This is the guy, like, this is me in art class my freshman year of high school trying to do watercolors. I'm bent taut like a Syrian bow trying to paint my own face, and it looks like it looks like the guy from the Goonies that they kept in the basement. That guy. Like, that's what my watercolor looks like. This dude was painting the Sistine Chapel, and he's saying, Gio, you gotta defend me. Like, I'm not in a good place right now. I am bent taut like a Syrian bow. My haunches are grinding, and my ass is doing everything to try to counterweight. Oh my gosh. One of the funny, I know he was going through it. Shout out to Michelangelo. I know you were going through it, buddy. But unbelievably hilarious letter to be writing when you're painting one of the most beautiful, is it a mosaic? I don't know if it counts as a mosaic. One of the most beautiful paintings ever done. Unbelievable. So another fun fact, actually, what's also in there, this is less funny, but Pieta is a statue of Mary holding Jesus after he's been crucified, that Michelangelo did. It is considered a masterpiece, duh, and it's currently in the Vatican. And the the sculpture uses triangular shape, which isn't like uniquely distinctive, as it was sort of like the thing at the time, equivalent to say like a popular sound on TikTok today. Like a lot of sculptors at the time were using triangular shapes. Oh, I gotta plug my 1 second. I gotta plug my charger in here real quick. There we go. All right, time for an art lesson for everybody. So the triangular shape in Pieta, and you should Google a photo before I start talking about it, so you can sort of have an idea of what I'm talking about. But what's notable to achieve the shape is to achieve the triangular shape, Michelangelo has to like slightly break off one of his calling cards of anatomical accuracy to make Jesus like slightly elongated. The effect being is that it gives his body a lot of weight. Like by making him look longer, it kind of makes him look heavier and more like grounded, like he's being pulled. It's sort of like, you know how when a balloon deflates, it becomes sort of like it loses its lightness and it becomes a little bit more elongated. It's a similar idea, whereas there's this heaviness and this groundedness about him that contrasts not only his innate heaviness, but also Mary's soft curves. She's very inflated, to go along with my metaphor. She's the balloon that's full. And what this shows is like Jesus is being pulled to the earth in a very human way. Now, Michelangelo's works, I believe, personally, show at the very least they show a fascination with the book of Genesis and the book of Exodus, which is, if not like an obsession. And the Sistine Chapel that we just talked about, you can see is probably the best version of his commentary on the book of Genesis, which is a whole other thing to get into. But it's interesting because, number one, Michelangelo is a devout Catholic, and generally Catholics and Christians really focus on the Gospels because that is obviously it's for them the Word of God, and it is the primary source for their religion. It's something that, if you ever look at the work of Wes Huff, is more scientifically validatable versus like the book of Genesis or the book of Exodus, especially the book of Genesis. Exodus does have some historical backing and evidence for it. But anyway, Michelangelo, he's known for his intense focus on anatomical accuracy, which comes from, I think, from an intense fascination with divine creation, sort of hence his love for Genesis, which is about divine creation. And what I find distinct about his use of the shape here in the sculpture is he breaks his pursuit of anatomical accuracy to give Jesus weight, to specifically invoke Genesis 3:19, which says, "You are dust, and to dust you shall return." I think this verse reassures Michelangelo. Is like, he finds it very reassuring, but also like I think he finds it terrifying. He was throughout his life this man that was obsessed with redemption and petrified of God's judgment. If you look at his poetry he wrote as he got older, it's a very common theme in his poetry that he is terrified of how God will judge him. And it's sort of these convictions that he holds very close to himself, very, very dear, that I think he portrays perfectly in this sculpture of Mary and Jesus. The moment after Jesus has died and been brought down from the cross, that I think it really encapsulates all of sort of his hopes, Michelangelo's hopes, his dreams, but also sort of his nightmare. There's so much that can be touched on in this sculpture, and hence why it's a masterpiece. And there are secular psychological breakdowns of it, of it's very representative, isn't it? Representative, there we go, of sort of the mother's mission of when you become a mom, you have a very unique, hey, by the way, happy Mother's Day. We just had Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to everybody who's listening, who is a mom. And Mother's Day to everyone who's not listening, who's a mom too. We'll spread the love. But there's a very unique moment that moms have that is part of their very unique connection with children, which is there is a moment in when the mom, and sometimes moms find out that they're pregnant from a doctor, or they find out with somebody that they're pregnant. But generally, there's this moment that a mom has it's truly crazy to think about, where for that moment, she's the only person in the world who knows that her baby exists. This baby, this human being exists. And she's the only person in the world that knows that. And reciprocally, she's the only person in the world that baby has any contact with. So literally, for a moment, she is that baby's entire world. And she is the only one privy to that baby existing. And it's this amazing, beautiful moment where it's just the two of them. It's just them. And obviously mothers have a unique... Mothers, a fun fact, almost, I believe, outside of rare exceptions, exclusively almost all of your mitochondrial DNA comes from your mother. I believe outside of rare exceptions. So thank your mother for that. But even just on on a biological level, on a philosophical, religious, or social level, mothers have unique connections with their babies. And what's powerful about this statue is, as a mom, you have to raise the child. But at some point, that your child has to go out into the world. They can't stay with you forever. They can't be your child forever. At some point, they have to go out into the world and become an adult and take their place in society. But you also know that society is dangerous and that there is an infinite number of things that could hurt your child, that could cause harm physically, emotionally, mentally. However, all of these dangers that are out there, dangerous animals, dangerous diseases, and there's war, and there's crazy people, and there's evil people, and all of these dangerous things that you've spent your whole, almost 2 decades protecting this child from, but also trying to get them ready. And then at some point, you have to let them go, and you have to let them go out. And that, one of the most beautiful ways I've ever heard it put was, you have to say, all right, go out there. And the child will say, but it's dangerous. And the mom has to say, yeah, it is, kid. But it's more dangerous if you stay here. And I think that's shown just socially, psychologically in this statue of Mary. Jesus is her baby. Of all these other things that get thrown in, at the end of the day, he's her baby. And she had to let him go out into the world and face the dangers. And this is what happened. He got crucified. But she has to do it. And all moms have to do it. Because it is more dangerous if the child stays there. Man or woman, doesn't matter. So this statue is undoubtedly a masterpiece on many, many levels. But I like to view all art through the lens of the artist, which is why I think it's important to sort of understand the biblical side of it, because Michelangelo was so religious. And that, sort of talking about the triangular shape, the triangular shape really brings Jesus and Mary together, Rather, they're not two separate people. They're very much one person within the statue. They're connected. They flow together, sort of illustrating their bond as mother and child that we just talked about. But I think it's also representation. I think Michelangelo is also representing the Trinity, which is a very important aspect. And, a triangle has three sides. The Trinity has three parts: Jesus, God, and the Holy Spirit. And I think that on top of, sort of being an allusion to Genesis, I think the entirety of the Pieta is a literal depiction of John 19, 30, we think 38 through, like low 40s somewhere, 40, 41, 42, 43, somewhere in there. But also John the 4:8. And so in John, the book of John, chapter 4, it says, whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. And the phrase God is love, in my eyes, looking at the piece of art through the lens of Michelangelo, is the explanation of the Holy Trinity. So God is love. So God obviously is the God part. That's easy, right? The is part is Jesus. So Jesus is known as the bridge between, in Christianity, Jesus is the bridge between humanity and God. But he's one of the things he's called is the great I am. He is the Word. Jesus is the Word. He is the great I am. Now, if you conjugate I am, we know I am, you are, he, she, it is. We remember that from school. Conjugated correctly for God, I am becomes he is. So Jesus is the Word. He is the is. Jesus is the is, literally bridging God and love together in that sentence. And then what is love? Love is the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit that descends upon Jesus as a dove in the earlier in the book of John when he's baptized, in a similar way to how it descends on Mary to conceive her with Jesus earlier in the Bible. Doves are a sign of love, even just in society today. Like, they've been a symbol of love, and peace and all of these different things. When Christians are baptized, they are filled with the Holy Spirit. So we sort of take that role of love. So God is love, the Holy Trinity. In this sculpture of Pieta, Michelangelo sculpts Jesus and Mary together in such a way, via the use of the triangular shape, to form an entire Holy Trinity that is God. That's 60 seconds real quick, the explanation of that sort of idea of the Trinity. So why is it important to note for Michelangelo? And why would we look at the Holy Trinity this way when talking about Michelangelo? Michelangelo's mom died when he was 6 years old. Children, as we know, like I just talked about, have this unique connection with their mothers. Like I just said, like there's them from the mitochondria to this I know my child, to this special love, to this moment that it's just you two in the world. They have a special connection. Those who do not know love, remember from John 4:8, those who do not know love do not know God. Mary represents not just the love of the Holy Spirit in this sculpture, but the love of motherhood that Michelangelo never really got to experience. And no, not to therapize a man who died over 500 years ago, but I don't think it's a stretch to suggest that Michelangelo's well-documented spiritual struggles and his fear of God's judgment, I think it largely stems from the loss of his mother at such a young age, and reading this of those who don't know love do not know God. And Michelangelo feeling like, because, in a way, he doesn't know God because of this. And that he's expressing this either consciously or subconsciously through this piece. And I think a lot of people could say, you're reading way too much into this. Like, you're taking a lot of assumptions, and maybe I am, but I will say this: Pieta is the only piece of art that Michelangelo ever signed. It's the only piece of art he ever signed. So obviously it means something to him beyond just him being proud of his work as a sculptor. Mm. Pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. And I mean, oh my gosh, like the Vatican is just full of pieces of art like this. It is chock full of them. Really unbelievable. You could spend a lifetime in that place and not run. And who's to say, like, too, like all of the different how would we phrase this? All of the different things that get said about what might be in the Vatican, in the basement of the Vatican. It's a real tough one. Because we don't know, but we do know that they hold priceless treasures. And I think the word priceless gets thrown around a lot. The Vatican is truly priceless, and so much of the art is truly priceless. You can't put a number on it. It's, oh my gosh, beyond fascinating. Beyond fascinating. So, good luck to Pope Leo. He's got a very heavy burden to bear, to say the least. But he seems to be having an interesting impact already. I went to church yesterday because I wanted to see what an American pope, if it would do anything for like attendance. And so I go to see, and the place is packed, which, maybe it's packed because it's Mother's Day, maybe not. But it wasn't this packed for Easter. I'll say that. And one thing I noticed, and maybe other people noticed this too, but there's a part of the Mass where the priest says, peace be with you. And when I was growing up, when I was a kid, we would say, and with you, essentially. And like 10, 12 years ago, something like that, they changed it to, and with your spirit. And what I noticed was that when he said that, there was a lot, like 25% of the people there were like, and with you, and then like frantically looked around when other people said within your spirit, and then we're like, what? With your what? And so I think that there was a decent number of people there that have not been in a long time, which is very interesting. It's on the growth, and on the grow at the moment. And we'll have to see where this goes, but who knows? What else is going on? Went to vacation. You know what's actually going on? This is, if you're not a hockey fan, I apologize, but this is really ticking me off right now. So the Edmonton Oilers are playing in the Stanley Cup finals. The Stanley Cup playoffs are going on, not the finals, but the Stanley Cup playoffs are going on right now. And we're into the second round, and right now the Edmonton Oilers are playing against the Vegas Golden Knights. Edmonton's up 2-1 in the series, right? I am so sick and tired of seeing people who have no idea about goaltending criticizing Stuart Skinner. All right. Has he been perfect in this series? And for the people who don't know, Stuart Skinner is technically the starter of the Edmonton Oilers, but he had a little bit of a rough patch where just, combination of a couple bad goals, some unlucky goals. Calvin Pickard, their backup, took over the spot, did very well. And Calvin I forget why he's out. I should look. I think he hurt something. I should Google that. See, why is Calvin Pickard out. Yeah, lower body injury from game 2. So Stuart Skinner gets the go into net, and specifically they lose on this last second goal. Literally, like I think there was like 0.4 seconds left. They lose the game on that, and people were going after Stuart Skinner on that play. I'm not an expert on many things, but one thing I am an expert in is goaltending and ice hockey. And what people need to understand is that goaltending is very easy and it's very hard at the same time. You have an incredibly hard task, but at the end of the day, also kind of an easy one. So to understand why Stuart Skinner isn't an idiot is firstly, he's in the NHL. All right. Anytime a player makes professional sport, nobody makes professional ice hockey or the NFL or the MLB or any like that. They don't make it on a fluke. All right. Maybe in comparison to other players in the NHL, he's maybe not as good in your opinion, but in perspective of the entire world, he is one of the best goalies in the world. Period. He's one of the best goalies in the world. Period. Top 1% of 1%. That's why he's there. And he was the starter, by the way. The starter. Okay. So here's goaltending in a nutshell. All right. 101. If you draw a line from the corner posts of the net, of all four to the puck, you get this like sideways pyramid triangle thing, right? This is what we call box control, right? For the puck to go into the net on a straight up shot, it has to be inside that box. If it's not, it will not go into the net. So if you put your body in that box and you take up the whole thing, the puck is either A, going to hit you, or B, going to go wide. The only way that it can go in is if it's deflected, or if it moves, changes angle, and then changes direction in some way, right? Tipped, possibly. So Stuart Skinner is in a tie game in the playoffs, and he sees a Vegas Golden Knights player coming down at him. The Vegas Golden Knights player, I don't believe he had anybody to pass to. He's kind of on his own. It's a turnover from behind the net, and that's not great. So that's already not Stuart Skinner's fault that the puck was turned over. And now he has to make this quick adjustment play. As a goalie, you do need to be aware of the time on the clock. And he knows that there's not much time left. So if you have a guy on his forehand, which just basically means he's in a shooting position, coming down at you, and there's not a lot of time on the clock, and he's got nobody to pass to, then what do? You bail out on the shot. You fully commit to the shot, which is what he did. He was very aggressive, and he bailed out on the shot. And a lot of people are like, oh, just go to your post. Well, if he goes to his post, it keeps him deeper in the net, so there's more of the box that opens up from that. And while, that pass that comes across eventually that ends up going in off of Dreisaitl's stick wouldn't have gone in, he doesn't know that's the play that's coming. So you have to forget what happens and focus on what was known at the time. And if he goes back, yes, he takes up a decent amount of net because he's a big guy, but also there are holes. And you go, well, those are kind of tiny holes. Those are hard shots. Yeah, they're hard shots for you, Mr. Beer League, sitting on the couch tweeting all day. But for an NHL hockey player, even a bad one, they can hit that shot. That's not like an impossible shot. They hit that. And they can hit it pretty decently frequently. Like it's still a hard shot, but they're really good. Again, they're in the NHL. They're really good. Even the worst player is really, really good. Okay? So, he bails out on the shot. understanding that the shooter is so close that he has to make a blocking save. Now, there are blocking saves and there are reacting saves. Reacting saves are ones you can track the puck in. Blocking saves are one where the puck is shot so close to you that it's humanly impossible to react. So you're just trying to be big and take up as much of the box as possible. So Stewart goes out because the more he gets out, the smaller the box is, the easier it is to take up all the room. And it works. Shocker. It works because the shooter doesn't shoot the puck because he knows there's nowhere to shoot. He has to hold on to it, which what does that do? Kills time, which is ticking down, and is very close to being out, right? And he eventually has to shoot the puck. But where he ends up shooting from, there's virtually no angle to score. If you look at the shot he takes, if you even can call it that, it's going 5 feet wide of the net. It's going super wide of the net. The only reason it goes in is because Leon Draisaitl accidentally deflects it into the net. And that's another discussion of, every goalie and defenseman should know this, of there are certain ways you don't want to stand in front of the net because you angle your skates and your body in a way that will more likely deflect pucks on net, right? And Leon Draisaitl, just unfortunate, like things happen fast. He didn't mean to do it. Like things happen really quick. It's the NHL. Ice hockey is incredibly quick. All right. It was an unfortunate bounce. And posting an overhead shot close up of the net and showing that Stuart Skinner's not in there and saying, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing. Where is he? That's not a valid criticism because he bailed out on the shot like he should. Goalies do this all the time. And they don't get... Look at Marc-Andre Fleury. And the Stanley Cup playoffs, way back, one of his most famous saves is a diving save across the net to stop a puck at the buzzer from going in, and he makes the save, and they win the Stanley Cup. If that goes in, the equivalent of what people are doing now to Stuart Skinner on that goal would be people go like, what is he doing? What's Marc-Andre Fleury doing? Diving, do a butterfly side, be ready. Like all you had time. Like it's people backseat this all the time. And it's because they don't understand hockey, because they haven't played it at a high level, and they don't understand. They have the goalie hockey IQ of a walrus from an insurance commercial. Okay? Stuart Skinner, listen, has he given up bad goals in the playoffs? Absolutely. So has a lot of other goalies. Some goalies are hot in the playoffs. And, why do certain goalies, Connor Hellebuck he's battling it, man. He's battling it. Why does he not succeed at this level? I don't know him. I know a couple of them. A couple of the guys, I don't know him. It's tough to say without talking to him. So my background is I was a coach. I did camps. I've worked for a couple teams. I've worked for a couple organizations. I worked in Sweden, worked here in the United States. So I've both done camp coaching and team coaching for goalies. And goaltending, and what's interesting about coaching, and for anybody out there who's looking to perform at a higher level in any sort of athletic event, one of the things you need to know is that performance is a big part of it is balancing the complexity of the task you're trying to do with the overall arousal of your body. Okay. So if you're trying to do something very complex, like a goaltending technical maneuver, or swinging a golf club, or what would be gymnastics, very complex, right? If you're trying to do something like that, generally you want to have lower arousal, because the more complex the task is, the more you want to be relaxed and able to think and work through it. But the easier the task is, of say, kicking a soccer ball or running the 100-meter dash in a straight line. Not to say that there's not complex technical stuff to it, but the actual thing that you're doing is far simpler. And those things, you can have higher arousal because you want your body pumped up, because the thing it has to do is objectively not that complicated. Okay. So with goaltending and with hard, complicated tasks, part of the reason you hear about like 10,000 hours and that sort of thing is because it takes a long time to build muscle memory. I think is kind of a bad word for it, but we'll use it for the purposes of this. Muscle memory. Okay. Now, when you're trying to do repetition after repetition, that's when you sort of build this pattern where it starts to become something that you don't have to think about a whole lot. In the beginning, you do. So that's why you practice, because practice is low arousal. And then when you get into the game, you can be at a high arousal and just fall back on your instinct and how you like to do things, which is why a lot of the times as a coach, you don't want to be overly technical and critical of how your athlete performs. And you want to be careful about when you step in, because the fact of the matter is, and I will say this as someone who's worked with professional athletes, actual professional athletes, that at the elite level, a lot of the best athletes don't know how they do what they do. They just do it. They just do it. And how they process it in their head and how it feels to them is very unique to them. You know, some people go and see what's a good example? Baseball, right? Is everybody has a different batting stance. Everybody has sort of a different swing, and they have sort of these general swing mechanics. But if you look at a lot of MLB players, they don't all have the best swing mechanics. And there are people that will say, get on top of the ball. And then there are people who say, that's a bunch of crap. You don't need to do that. And at the end of the day, they're both professional baseball players, right? They both get hits. Some people get more hits than others. But is that a reflection on how right they are of their batting? You know, if you go out and you try to copy somebody, you might not get the same results because that's not what works for you and with your body. Your body's built a certain way. So to a degree, you want to leave room for exploration and for invention. And this is sort of the thing that is hard to tell a lot of parents is it becomes pretty obvious pretty early the kids that have a shot at professional sports. Like if you've ever met a professional athlete or grown up with somebody, or maybe one went to your high school or your college, more like looking at high school for this, that they've always been pretty good at their sport. Some of them are good across the board, but a lot of like these first overall picks, they're studs and they've been studs. And when I was coaching and when you're doing recruiting, the best thing you can do, in my opinion, to make yourself look like a good coach is to just recruit a really good player. Like the good players are going to do good. So recruit a good player who's going to give you results, and just don't get in their way. And people are going to come to you and be like, oh my gosh, you worked with them. Like, you're so good. But yeah, thanks. I know. But the reality is, like, I think coaches can make marginal technical difference. The biggest difference is really the mental side of you trying to get in and understand like how this person thinks the game, how they view life, how they process information, how they handle situations, how they handle adversity, what are these things, and then figuring out ways to get them mentally in a place where they believe in themselves. And I have seen it so many times, and as I get older, I believe that it's more and more impactful as to the actual result, that the mental belief of the player is maybe, I don't want to say more important, because technical prowess and ability is important. If you take someone with no athletic ability and just have them believe, they're not going to suddenly be a professional athlete. Like, they do need some athletic background at a certain level, but I think the rest, the mental side of it is so big. And I would posit a guess that that's Connor Hellebuck's problem, is there's some sort of mental disconnect where he's aware of his ability to not perform under pressure. And it's not like he hasn't. Like in college, he did. He made like 65 saves when he was at UMass Lowell. in a Hockey East final. Like, he's capable of performing under pressure, but I would even wonder, did he even view that as pressure, or did he go in saying, yeah, we're going to win? You know, like, we're so much better, versus how does he approach this now? So it would be an interesting, I would love to talk to him and get under and see how he sort of views things. Because like I said, a lot of how elite athletes perform is instinct, and especially in the moment. Like, he's processing so many things and he's acting instinctively based on what he's practiced. And like, some of the stuff he does is not stuff I would recommend to your average goalie. He's very awkward on his posts. I talked to another goalie coach who was a goalie coach at the University of Maine when Hellebuck was at UMass Lowell, so they're in the same both in hockey, for people who don't know. And he said that one of the things that they talked about was just throwing pucks on him from a bad angle and making him make awkward saves and looking for rebounds and that sort of thing. And playoff hockey is different from regular season hockey, and there's a lot of things that will happen in the playoffs, a lot more hard-nosed hockey that you're not going to see, and maybe that's what's getting to him. I don't know, but it would be interesting to talk to him and see where that disconnect is, and vice versa. Like, you see goalies that are performing very well, like Jake Ottinger, who I don't see a reason why at this point Ottinger won't be the goalie for Team USA at the Olympics. Like, Hellebuck didn't do bad at Four Nations, but let me say this. If Jake Ottinger were in net for that Canada game in the finals, I don't think we lose that game. I think the first goal that is floated in from McKinnon, he comes up and he floats that puck, and that's probably going in on all the goalies. But that second goal where it's sort of a bad angle snipe over the shoulder on a bad angle shot on a semi breakaway, like, Hellebuck, it's again going into the post and being awkward, and Jake Ottinger doesn't have that. Even Swayman doesn't have that. Like, Swayman's a big game goalie. I'm a bias because I got to watch him at the University of Maine, but he's a pressure guy. He handles pressure well. I know he's having a bad season this year, but you don't need him you just need him for one moment, one game, and he's in his home garden, and that's not nothing. He's in his home rink. He understands the rink. He understands the field. He's played well there in the playoffs before in pressure situations. I think if both of those goalies are in, we win that game. That's just my personal opinion. Not to say that Hellebuck played bad. I just think the other two would play better. You know, and like, if you look at the United States, like, we have so many goalies right now. We have so many goalies outside of Connor Hellebuck and Jake Ottinger and Jeremy Swayman. You have Thatcher Demko if he can stay healthy. You have Spencer Knight. You have Joe Wall, but he's kind of, I don't know, I've not loved him in the playoffs so far. He's done okay. He kind of feels like he's treading water. He doesn't feel totally comfortable in the deep end yet. Dustin Wolf. You have Dustin Wolf. You have Nedeljkovic. I mean, Anthony Stolars, I would say, has to be a high consideration guy. There's I think Jacob Fowler coming up is going to be a stud. I think he's going to be a stud for Montreal. Watching him, I think he has that it factor that he needs to succeed, and I think he will succeed. Where Caden Primo and Montembeault have maybe not been as good as you would want them to be for the Canadians, right? There's so many goalies on the up and up, and Alex Lyon, Joey Decord. I think all of those guys, if there's a lot of goalies who are just like, they're a step behind, but they could very easily take that step this next season and play their way onto that Olympic roster. So there's competition. And unfortunately for Connor Hellebuck, like, that's how it goes. He's not a bad goalie. He's maybe the best goalie in the world on any given night. Could be. I would say Bobrovsky for myself at the moment. If I had one game for my life on the line, I would put Bobby in that. But after him, it might be Hellebuck. even if he is awkward on the post, and it's going to cause me a lot of stress. But you snooze, you lose. That's how it goes. That's how these things go. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. But kind of going back to my earlier point, like goaltending is complex, and so I would love to see heart rate. That's one thing I would love to see. I'd love to see his heart rate stuff to sort of know where he is on his arousal level, and then look at his performance and see like, okay, is he kind of on the lower end? Is he on the higher end? Biathlon. That was a great example. I should have talked about the biathlon. That's maybe the best example of this, of when they're skiing in the biathlon, their heart rate gets way up. But when they go to shoot, because it's a technical thing and because also they want to steady themselves and all these other things, they breathe in a way to drop their arousal level and their heart rate so they can be calm and relaxed, and then they can... That was supposed to be shooting. I don't know why I didn't go. I'm sorry. I'm not beating these. I talk about poop too much allegations. But beside the point. But yeah, I just want to get that out because I'm so sick and tired of people criticizing some of these goalies when they don't understand. Like, if you want to criticize a goalie for a bad goal, but the problem is they don't know the difference between a bad goal to them is just a goal that goes in. And then they'll go, oh, nothing he could have done there. Well, I'm like, yep, a lot he could have done. A lot he could have done, actually. A lot. You know, the thing to remember is if your goalie makes a lot of 10-bell robbery saves, it's probably because he was out of position a lot. And it's not the best sign. The best hockey goalie in the world is probably the most boring goalie to watch because he's always in position and the puck is just hitting him most of the time. So, something to keep in mind before we start throwing stones at Stuart Skinner. Ah, man. Anything else going on? Nothing else that I can really think of at the moment. I feel like I saw a study recently that I wanted to talk about. There was a study or something. Oh, okay. Here it is. So, largest summary of supplements for depression. Saffron had the largest decrease in depressive symptoms, right? Now, there's a study going around and it shows a bunch of different supplements starting from vitamin B6 and tryptophan and going down to saffron plus ADT. Now, ADT is antidepressants, FYI. So, saying saffron had the largest decrease in depressive symptoms is a little bit of a little bit of a thing because you're taking it with antidepressants, and antidepressants alone. Okay. So as far as like impact factor, right? We look at SMD. Okay. SMD is the impact factor that they're looking at. And that's like the amount that they're judging it by. So like vitamin B6 from tryptophan, negative 0.82. So it kind of made the depression worse. Probiotics plus B7 kind of made the depression worse. Placebo, 0. All right. So 0 SMD is the placebo. So that's what you're trying to beat, right? So ADT, just antidepressants alone, 0.49. Okay. 0.49. SAMe, which I like to take, plus probiotics, had 0.48. So it's kind of similar. Now, SAMe is my SAMe supplement. SAM, lowercase e, is a supplement that you can take that is essentially helping with methylation. It's S-adenosyl L-methionine. It is a naturally occurring compound in the body that plays a central role in cellular function and metabolism, and it helps regulate hormones and produce brain chemicals like dopamine, melatonin, and serotonin. It's a methyl donor that's involved in the synthesis of neurotransmitters and polyamines, which controls cell growth. So as you can see, that would be a very logical thing to take for depression, right? I like it for like overall anxiousness. You feel a lot calmer, I find, when you take it. SAMI plus, now that was SAMI with probiotics, right? SAMI alone, 0.52. So probiotics actually kind of made it a little worse, which was interesting. So SAMI, 0.52, antidepressants, 0.49, placebo, 0. Combine SAMI and antidepressants, and you get 0.99. So compounds, they work together, right? Saffron, let me see if it's on here by itself. I think it was. No. Only in combination with other things. But anyway, the biggest SMD off of the baseline came from saffron plus antidepressants, which was 3.79. So that's huge. So what this study really says is if you have depression and you get put on antidepressants, maybe consider looking into taking saffron with it and see if that helps. L-theanine, 0.364. Another thing you could take. Amino acid, vitamin B12, carnitine, zinc. These all had very profound, over 1.5 SMD as far as like favor of intervention, right? Something called Nepta, which I'm not familiar with, had a really good results. Let me Google what is Nepta. Nepta supplement. Nepeta. Oh, maybe I spelled it wrong. Nepeta. Also, it's catnip. Interesting. Catnip. So Nepta. Oh, is that what it is? Nepeta? So it's spelled Nepta on the study, but Nepeta can provide stress relief, aid in sleep, and support digestion in humans. It's a type of catnip. Catnip tea. Fascinating. So maybe that's effective? Is that what they're talking about? Is there a medication called Nepta? Let me see. Nepta depression. I spelled it all as one word because I'm an idiot. Nepta depression. Let's see what's going on here. Oh. Non-invasive stimulating deep brain areas to breathe depression. Okay, then what? That's not it. I'm going to guess that that's what they mean. I don't know. But I'm going to assume that they mean Nepeta and they spelled it wrong. Interesting. Catnip tea. Hey, so maybe if you're feeling down, try some catnip tea and see if that does anything for you. That's crazy. Zinc was a big one. Carnitine was a big one. Iron did very well. Rhodiola rosacea. Interesting. So maybe try some catnip tea. That might be the move. It seems to be decently effective, assuming this is the same thing. And for anyone interested in the study that you want was a study out of Cambridge, published in Cambridge University Press, that is comparative efficacy and tolerability of nutraceuticals for depressive disorder, a systematic review and network analysis. Just came out May 2nd, 2025. This is done by Cheng et al. Nutraceuticals have been taken as an alternative and add-on to treatment for depression disorders. Direct comparisons between different nutraceuticals and between nutraceuticals and placebo or antidepressants are limited. Thus, it is unclear which nutraceuticals are most efficacious. All right. So saffron, it looks like. 192 trials involving 17,500 patients and 44 nutraceuticals were eligible for inclusion. Fascinated. It is noted that EPA plus DHA, SAMI, and curcumin showed strong performance as either monotherapies or adjuncts of antidepressives. Most nutraceuticals showed comparative tolerability to placebo. Notable combinations were EPA, DHA plus antidepressants, SAMe, zinc plus antidepressant, tryptophan, folate. Yeah, so it seems to really be, oh gosh, Gary Breck is going to be pumped about this, but it really just seems to be a uh, sort of the thing of methylation. And I'm not, Gary Brecka talks about this way too much, but not way too much, but this is a big thing that he talks about with methylation and that sort of thing. But all of these things, tryptophan's going to help with hormones. Zinc is going to be very helpful as far as like vitamin D is so important with your hormones. And you need it with vitamin K and magnesium and zinc to properly utilize it in your body. And so if you're deficient in zinc, which a lot of people are going to be, because, where are you getting zinc from your diet? Where are you getting zinc from your diet? Do people know? Like, if you're sitting there right now listening, where are you getting zinc from your diet if you're not supplementing it? Oysters? Are you eating lots of oysters? I mean, nuts? Are you eating lots of nuts? Pumpkin seeds, eggs have some. Are you eating enough eggs to meet your daily requirements? And then it's again by bioavailable forms of zinc. What kind of zinc are you taking? Are you taking zinc oxide? Are you taking, zinc, what's it called? Picolinate, I think. Zinc picolinate. Like there's a bunch of different forms and they do different stuff, right? Are you taking curcumin? Are you taking acetylmethionine? Like, gosh, it's so confusing. Oh, could also go into this. I guess this is interesting. This is something I'm keeping my eye on, right? So there is there's a lady called Casey Means who has just been named Surgeon General. And for those of you who don't know, like the Surgeon General has sort of had different roles throughout history. At the moment, I think a lot of their roles are very redundant, that, the FDA or the NIH or a lot of these other organizations kind of spearhead these. So a lot of what the Surgeon General does, I think, is, like I said, redundant, and like if it even needs to be a position is questionable, I would say. But essentially what it is like a PR thing for medicine, of like they're the front facing doctor in the country, right? And obviously the Make America Healthy Maha people are largely in charge at the moment of a lot of these appointments. And she was a spearhead figure in that movement. Now, Casey was at Stanford doing surgery, as people are surely aware. And she says she left because she wasn't making patients better, and that it was only patch jobs that she was doing, and that she wasn't like fixing the root causes of things, which is what she claims. Now, other people, some professors, I think, say that she dropped out because of anxiety. I don't know what the truth is. Maybe it was a bit of both. Maybe she felt like she wasn't helping people and started to have a crisis and got anxious because of it, and they're both kind of right. And she just told them it's because of anxiety, because she didn't want to say, I think this whole thing is, a sham or a scam or whatever. Who knows? But she's been named. And I've been kind of following her for a little bit, because there's something about her and her brother Callie that seems a little off. It's more her brother Callie that seems a little bit off. But there's a bigger thing in general that I've been kind of keeping an eye on that I think is worth noting, is a lot of these health companies like TrueMed that Callie runs, or that Levels, or Function, or Ways to Well, they offer really helpful services to people. Like, learning how to use tax advantaged accounts to buy health stuff like groceries is so helpful to so many people. And being able to do blood work and look inside people and get like full holistic pictures of what's going on is so helpful if you can afford it. And being able to go out, like Function offers so much good blood work for $500. And that's expensive for a lot of people, but for what you get throughout the year and the return you get, you get to be very proactive in your health, right? And so they offer these immensely beneficial services. And there's a lot of other companies in there that were a part of it. Plunge with their cold therapy tanks. I don't do cold plunges myself, but for certain people, certain situations, yes, there's benefits. Thrive Market with food and that sort of thing. Like there's a lot of good people that are offering good services, right? But there's also this thing that there's a lot of Silicon Valley influence in this. And what's interesting is that I was talking to a friend who is getting their doctoral degree in machine learning at Duke. And he was telling me that a lot of the AI systems, he was at a talk, and I think someone from OpenAI was giving this talk that's behind ChatGPT. And they were talking about how it's kind of been trained on all of the things that are publicly available at the moment. And so their focus is on private data that they can't get. And sort of this guy didn't say this, but they're kind of one of their white whales is health data. Because like you hear Brigham at Ways to Well talk about this a lot, of using AI and large amounts of health data to sort of innovate the next iteration of medicine 3.0 that Peter Attia would talk about. And I think we have to be careful because using AI to help people could be immensely beneficial. If it can track your blood work and maybe catch things that doctors might not catch because they don't see you every day, I think that would be enormously helpful. But in the same way that like knowing your buying habits can help you buy products that are better for you, it can also help certain companies advertise to you and get you to buy things that you don't need and exploit you. And it can also be used in that way. And I think there's a very valid one of my questions would be how much of this data that they're gathering is going towards good AI. I've seen good things out of Brigham so far, but with Levels, is she selling this data to Silicon Valley? Is that why they're investing? I don't know. Maybe I have that wrong, but it seems like a data grab from Silicon Valley in the same way that, and they're co-opting things that are good and do help us. Like the internet is very helpful, but it has been co-opted to do very bad things. And so I think we need to be careful in criticizing what they're doing and the services offered, and saying that, in the same way that like USAID was doing a lot of bad things, they're doing a lot of good things too. And so it's sort of that strategic of how do we get rid of the bad and maintain the good has to be a forefront for us and has to be at the forefront of the conversation. But there's a lot of doctors who are mad because the focus seems to be on chronic disease. And I think there's very valid arguments to be made that just focusing on food and exercise and sleep isn't going to solve all of our problems. Obviously not. And just removing a few dyes, is it going to make people healthier? Yes. Is it going to make people drastically healthier? I don't know. Some people, for sure. But it is, I think, that pursuit of removing things from our environment that are causing negative harm, and sort of this idea that, the government's job is to protect us, if that's how you want to view it. And so if you're giving us something that's, making us sicker, even if it's just a little bit sicker, what are you doing? What are you doing? Is this the best use of our money and our resources? So it'll be very interesting to see where this goes, and be very interesting to see how she approaches this topic, because what people care about in the Make America Healthy and what people think will make people healthiest is very divisive even within the movement. And there are people who are more focused on therapeutics. There are people who are more focused on holistic lifestyle interventions. There are people who are, even within the movement, who are carnivores and who are vegetarians. And they would both agree that whole foods are the way to go. But what whole foods to eat, there's vast disagreements. And so I think one thing that people have to keep in mind is that within the community of Making America Healthy, there are people who believe in the mission but vastly disagree on what the most important thing is and what the most important thing to do is. And some people feel dire urgency in this, and that's going to cause them to speak up and to call people out and not have a lot of patience and maybe be a little over the top dramatic at times. But I genuinely believe that most of these people are coming from a place of genuinely caring, and that they want to see people healthy. And what we need to keep our eye out for, I think, is the people that are trying to co-opt that to enrich themselves. Now, I think I'll end on this. And this is just something that I've been watching out for and why I'm interested in Callie and Casey Means specifically. More Callie is, if you listen to Callie's interviews, one thing is you want to obviously listen for the content, but you also want to listen to how people answer questions. And if you ask Callie about food and you say, is whole food better for you than McDonald's? He'll go, yes, whole food is better, right? But if you were to ask him about, the controversial efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccine, which is very controversial within the Maha movement. Some people believe in it, some people don't believe in it, right? That's where you see him go and start to talk about, like, I think we have this unbelievable opportunity for medical freedom of choice and to be able to give people back the opportunity for them to do the things that they want to do, which is a very interesting response in relation to Make America Healthy, because what he gets at there is a core principle belief that I think a lot of the people in Make America Healthy have, which is that people should have the opportunity to live their lives how they want to live it in the regards to their medical and like in regards to their medical care. If you want to go and get, Eastern holistic medicine, that's up to you. And if you want Western medicine, that's up to you. But he didn't really answer the question, right? And I think you're going to see a lot of people kind of get mad and say, like, oh, he's a faker, that sort of thing. I don't think it necessarily means that, no pun intended, but it is interesting to note when people don't answer questions, but and it's a very political answer. And what that to me tells me is, and this is a feeling that I've had from the beginning, is I think he sees this as an opportunity to position himself politically. He's not a doctor. His sister's a doctor, or was a practicing doctor, and no longer licensed as of last year when the movement really took off and she got super involved. But he's a pharma guy. He's a money guy. And that's, to me, the guy to watch. I think there's a lot of people that are focusing on Casey because she's the one who has the title. But I think the person to keep your eye on is Callie. That's the one who I would watch and see how he develops moving forward. Okay. Well, that's all really I have to say for today. That's the only thing on my mind. So like I said, I think I'm going to get a guest soon. It should be interesting. I'm very excited to talk to her. She's been a friend of mine forever. So I think she'll have some very interesting insights into some very front page news things that have been going on as of late. But until then, bye bye, everybody.